Processing of your permanent selection application. The processing of your permanent selection application will begin when you have completed and signed the permanent selection application form, submitted the form within the prescribed time frame, provided the requested documents in the required format, paid the processing fees for your application. Your permanent selection application will be reviewed according to the selection grid for the regular skilled worker program. You need to have obtained a sufficient number of points in the grid to be selected to receive a Certificate de Sélection du Québec, CSQ, as stipulated in Quebec immigration regulation and the regulation respecting the weighting applicable to the selection of foreign nationals. The selection grid has 9 factors with different criteria for assessment. These factors enable an assessment of your potential for integration into the Quebec labor market and society, as well as that of your accompanying spouse. Training. To understand your training, the criteria assessed are your level of education and your area of training. Level of education. To be eligible for selection, you must have at least a diploma that is equivalent to general or vocational high school studies in Quebec. Diplomas obtained outside Quebec are assessed according to their equivalence with the Quebec education system. Points are awarded according to your level of education in Quebec. Vocational high school, technical post-secondary, university, area of training. The assessment of your training is based on the list of areas of training. This list contains programs of study which are worth points in the selection grid and are in demand in Quebec's labor market. These programs are at the following levels: vocational high school, technical post-secondary, university. Points are awarded on the basis of the qualifications most in demand in Quebec's labor market, job prospects in Quebec, the requirements for practicing the occupations in question, the type of diploma, whether it is a Quebec diploma, or equivalent or a foreign diploma. To be awarded points, your training must be similar to one of the areas of training indicated on the list. If your diploma is not included on the list, or if it is in the 0 point section, you will not obtain points in the selection grid for your area of training. Even if your training is included on the list, you may have to complete courses to upgrade your level after you arrive in Quebec. If your profession or trade is regulated in Quebec, this hyperlink will open in a new window. You will have to fulfill the requirements of its official regulatory body before you can legally practice it in Quebec. 2. Work experience. For your work experience, the criterion assessed is the duration of employment. The following jobs are recognized: remunerated job posts that you held, full-time, part-time, work internships you completed to obtain a diploma, full-time, part-time. For your work experience to be applicable to the assessment of your application, it must have been acquired in the 5 years preceding the submission of your application, in a category A, B or C occupation as defined by the National Occupational Classification, NOC, legally in the country concerned. 3. Age. To obtain points in the selection grid for your age, you must be between 18 and 42 years old. 4. Language proficiency. For your language proficiency, the criteria assessed are your knowledge of French and English. To obtain points for your knowledge of French and English, you must present attestations of test results or diplomas recognized by the Minister de l'Immigration, de la Francisation et de l'Inclusion, even if it is your native language. Your results must date from within 2 years of the date you submit your application. You may also have to attend an interview to obtain points for this factor. If you do not wish to submit test results or diplomas for your knowledge of French or English, you must indicate this in your permanent selection application form. You will not obtain points for these criteria. The language proficiency of your accompanying spouse is also assessed. Dependent children do not need to submit results. Knowledge of French. You can obtain points in the selection grid for your knowledge of French, depending on your results in oral comprehension, oral expression, written comprehension, written expression. This is one of the factors for which you can obtain the most points on the selection grid. To obtain points on the grid, your knowledge of French must be at minimum level 7, advanced intermediate of the Échelle québécoise des niveaux de compétence en français des personnes immigrants adult or equivalent. You must submit attestations of test results or diplomas recognized by the Minister de l'Immigration, de la Francisation et de l'Intégration. These are TCF Québec, France Education International, TCF Canada, France Education International, TCF, France Education International, DELF, France Education International, DELF, France Education International, TEFIC, Chambre de commerce et d'industrie de Paris Île-de-France, CCIPIDF, TEF Canada, CCIPIDF, TEF, CCIPIDF. Only results issued by the providers of these tests, France Education International and the Chambre de Commerce et d'Industrie de Paris de France, are recognized by the Minister de l'Immigration, de la Francisation et de l'Intégration. Electronic versions of the above-mentioned tests are also recognized. You must pass these tests in a center approved by the organization that provides them. Knowledge of English. You can also obtain points in the selection grid for your knowledge of English, depending on your results in oral comprehension, oral expression, written comprehension, written expression. You must submit your results from the test recognized by the Minister de l'Immigration, de la Francisation et de l'Intégration, IELTS. To obtain points on the grid, your knowledge of English must be at minimum level 5, intermediate, of the Canadian language benchmarks. Your spouse's knowledge of English is not assessed. Therefore, no points are awarded for this. 5 stays and family in Quebec. The stay in Quebec criterion is assessed on the nature of the stay, the length of the stay, the date that you came to Quebec. You can obtain points for stays undertaken for work, study or tourism. To obtain points, your stay in Quebec must have been at least 2 weeks or more in the 10 years preceding the date of submission of your selection application. You can also obtain points for the family in Quebec criterion if one or more of your family members has Canadian citizenship or permanent residency in Quebec. The recognized family relations are spouse or common law partner, child, parent, sibling, grandparent. 6 characteristics of your spouse. The selection grid also applies to your accompanying spouse for the following criteria: level of education, area of training, age, language proficiency. For these criteria, the same requirements and number of points apply, except for language proficiency, where only oral French comprehension and expression is assessed to obtain points in the selection grid. 7. Validated job offer. A validated job offer is the hiring of foreign workers on a permanent basis by Quebec employers for jobs in demand. If the offer meets certain conditions, the Minister de l'Immigration, de la Francisation et de l'Intégration validates it. If an employer makes you or your accompanying spouse a permanent job offer in Quebec, you can submit a validation application to the Minister de l'Immigration, de la Francisation et de l'Intégration. Once validated, you can be awarded points for the permanent job offer in the selection grid, particularly if the post is outside the Montreal Metropolitan Community, MMC. The number of points awarded varies depending on the job location criteria, if the job is inside or outside the MMC. 8. Children. The criteria assessed are the number of your dependent children, the number of your accompanying spouse's dependent children, their age. If a Canadian citizen dependent child is accompanying you, they are also assessed. 9. Capacity for financial self-sufficiency. When you submit your application, you must sign the financial self-sufficiency contract. Skilled workers, entrepreneurs and self-employed workers. By signing this contract, you agree to provide for your needs and your accompanying family's needs for at least the first 3 months following your arrival in Quebec. Below are the amounts, in Canadian dollars, that you must have at your disposal for the period from January 1st to December 31st, 2022. This varies according to the number and kind of dependent people accompanying you. Selection interview. You may be required to complete an interview with an immigration counselor, who will verify, for example, the accuracy of the information provided in your application for permanent selection. If so, you will receive a notice specifying the date of the interview, location of the interview, time of the interview, documents to bring. The Minister de l'Immigration, de la Francisation et de l'Intégration may also conduct additional verification.